Welcome back to Magic Muggle, a Harry Potter after show. I'm your host, Eric Sequeira, aka Mr. Honest, and today we are walking straight into the stretch of Prisoner of Azkaban, where the book stops being a school year mystery and turns into a full-blown reckoning. We're covering 3 chapters that all happen in one frantic swing of time. Chapter 16, Professor Trelawney's Prediction. Chapter 17, Cat, Rat, and Dog. And Chapter 18, Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. Exams, an execution, a prophecy, a dog in the dark, and a truth in the Shrieking Shack that rewrites Harry's entire life. This is one of those runs where you almost want to yell at the book. Let's jump right into Chapter 16, Professor Trelawney's Prediction. So we start in this weird emotional whiplash. Harry is still riding the high of finally winning the Quidditch Cup. The weather has the audacity to be gorgeous, cloudless skies, summer air, lakes sparkling, the giant squid doing lazy laps. Have we learned of this giant squid before this moment? Every student's instinct is screaming, lay in the grass, drink iced pumpkin juice, which sounds okay. I'm really interested. And then pretend to study. And Hogwarts says, nope, exams inside now. Even Fred and George are studying. Percy is on the edge about his NEWT newts like he is trying to interview for the Minister of Magic at 18. Hermione looks like a walking to-do list who hasn't slept since February. Harry and Ron look at her schedule and realize that she has double booked her exams again. And she's just like, yeah, that's fine. I don't want to explain this. Like, time itself is just her side quest. Now, about Buckbeak. Right as the stress is already high, Hedwig swoops in with Hagrid's note. Buckbeak's appeal is set for the 6th. It's the same day as they finish their exams. Someone from the ministry is coming, and the executioner will be there too. Not if needed, just there. Brought along like a foregone conclusion. Hermione clocks what that means instantly. They're not planning to decide Buckbeak's fate at the appeal. They're planning to confirm it. This makes Ron especially angry. Harry feels that the Malfoy influence is all over it. And worst of all, they're still stuck under security rules. No cloak, no sneaking down, no proper goodbye. That helplessness sits on the top of the exam stress like another weight. I love this run because it makes Hogwarts feel so lived in. We go exam by exam. Transfiguration, teapots to tortoises. Everyone's worried about the wrong details. Sprouts for tails, steam, willow pattern shells. Hermione upsets hers. And it looks more like a turtle, while the other kids are like, mine is mostly a teapot with anxiety. They do cheering charms with Professor Flitwick. Harry is so nervous, he overdoes it on Ron and sends him into full gremlin giggle mode. And Ron has to be removed from the room like someone got accidentally drunk on magic. The easiest exam of their lives is the care of magical creatures with Hagrid, but also the saddest. Hagrid, completely distracted, sets out flobberworms and announces, if it's still alive at the end of the hour, you pass. He's so lost in thinking about Beaky that he can't even barely teach. And we get that little dagger of a line. Beaky's getting a bit depressed, cooped up. Hagrid's trying to act like, well, we'll know in 2 days, like he's talking about the weather and not a literal execution. For potions, Harry's confusing concoction refuses to behave. Snape is practically glowing as he writes down what looks to be a 0. It's pretty much Snape saying, I can't kill you, but I can fail you. Astronomy at midnight, up in the tower, stifling, tired, and everyone's just wanting sleep. History of magic, Harry spills every medieval witch hunt fact ever told to him and basically dreams about ice cream while he's writing about burning. Herbology in the heat. Neck, sunburnt, everyone's just dragging themselves back to the common room thinking, just one more day, just one more exam, then it's over. You can feel that end of the year heaviness, that weird mix of exhaustion and anticipation. I never liked finals in school. I wasn't the greatest letter grade student. I was a very big theater kid. And I'll just say it. I could not wait for these to be over. If I was at Hogwarts, I'd probably be the same way. Even though right now I'm wondering, History of Magic sounds very interesting if I didn't know the world of magic at all before I came to Hogwarts like Harry. And then there's Lupin's obstacle course exam. Their second to last exam is defense against the dark arts, and Lupin, being Lupin, doesn't just sit them down with parchment. He builds them an obstacle course. Grindylow paddling pool, red cap potholes, Hinky Punk and Marsh trying to lure you the wrong way, and a fresh Bogart in a trunk at the end. Harry nails it. Lupin quietly gives him full marks, and it means everything to Harry. Ron does great until the Hinky Punk absolutely bamboozles him into sinking. Sorry if I'm saying some of these things wrong, like Hinky Punk. Hermione does everything perfectly, go figure, but the Bogart, that is where her worst fear is McGonagall telling her she's failed everything. That tells you everything you need to know about Hermione's brain. They head back up toward the castle, and the mood shifts when they see Cornelius Fudge on the steps. Fudge is there in his pinstriped cloak, sweating slightly, and he explains why he's come. He's going to witness the execution of the mad hippogriff. Fudge has this way of being so obliviously cold. Like it's funny, but it's also like, how are you so oblivious, sir? You are the minister of magic. That phrasing alone is brutal. Mad hippogriff. Then we see the others. The ancient committee member, so old he's barely able to do this physically. McNair, the executioner, casually running his thumb along the blade of his axe like it's his favorite toy. Hermione tries to keep Ron from shouting about justice right in front of the Minister of Magic himself because Ron is this close to yelling, "This isn't justice," in Fudge's face. I wouldn't have been wrong. I don't think it would have been super wrong of Ron to do that, except endangering his father's position at the Ministry of Magic. Hermione has to remind him, your dad works there. But even she doesn't believe Hagrid stands a real chance. Harry heads up to divination for his last exam. Everyone's going in one at a time with Trelawney. I'm never going to say her name without bumbling it. Neville comes down shaken, convinced he'll have a horrible accident if he talks about what she asked him. Her way of probably scaring Neville into, look, you better not spoil this for the rest of the class. Harry goes in expecting nonsense. He stares into the crystal ball and sees fog and decides, all right, fine, I'm going to make something up. I see a hippogriff. Trelawney, of course, steers it straight back toward Doom, trying to get a decapitation sequence going for Harry and a weeping Hagrid out of him. Harry finally gets dismissed and relieved, and he doesn't even give her the satisfaction of saying he sees Buckbeak killed. And that's when it happens. Her voice changes. It will happen tonight. Her body locks, her eyes roll, and in this strange, harsh voice, she lays down the prophecy. The Dark Lord lies alone and friendless. His servant has been chained these 12 years. Tonight, before midnight, the servant will break free and will help the Dark Lord rise again, greater and more terrible than ever. Then she drops forward, snorts, wakes up like she just napped, and insists she never said any such thing. And Harry is left standing there like, oh, so either I hallucinated that or my divination professor just channeled something ancient and terrifying. Harry rushes back to the common room to tell Ron and Hermione about the prophecy, only to find their faces already destroyed. Buckbeak's appeal is lost. The execution is scheduled for sunset, and Hagrid doesn't want them to come. He doesn't want them to see it. And Harry immediately says, we're going. He's not sitting down there alone. The problem? They still don't have the invisibility cloak. But even Hermione did this for them, and the peak Hermione form just vanishes and goes and retrieves the cloak from which it was under the one-eyed witch tunnel to Hogsmeade. And then she reappears like a stealth agent. Ron is stunned. Harry is impressed. Hermione is a little bit flattered. They decide they'll go under the cloak and they'll be there for Hagrid, even though they can't stop the execution. Under the invisibility cloak, they slip down to Hagrid's cabin. Hagrid opens the door, pale, shaking, not understanding how it's them at first. He's numb. He's too far past even tears. He lets Buckbeak sit outside with a bit of fresh air and the sky for the last time. This does put a weight in my tummy. I don't want this giant hippogriff to die. Beaky, tied in the pumpkin patch, sniffing the breeze. Hagrid keeps spilling milk and shaking because it's hard for him to pour. You could tell he's just completely distraught by this, and it's sort of heartbreaking. When Hagrid's heart is breaking, my heart is breaking. Hermione fusses and tries to straighten up and tries to help. Harry tries to ask if there's anything Dumbledore can do. And Hagrid explains that Dumbledore tried, but Lucius Malfoy leaned on the committee. McNair's an old friend of his. The whole thing was loaded from the start. Hermione goes to get more milk and screams because Scabbers falls out of the jug. The missing rat, the one Ron thought Crookshanks ate. The one we know is a whole lot more important than anybody realizes yet. He's here, patchy and terrified and fighting like mad. Ron grabs him, tries to calm him down, and he continues to go crazy. And then Hagrid sees the figures coming down from the castle. Dumbledore, Fudge, the committee member, McNair, and the axe. Hagrid panics and shoves them out the back door, and he begs them not to be there when it happens. They throw on the cloak, and they hurry away, Scabbers thrashing in Ron's hands. They're halfway up the lawn when they hear the voices at the front of Hagrid's cabin. They're trying not to listen. Ron is struggling to hold Scabbers. Hermione wants to get further away, and Harry wants to turn back. And then, from behind them, there's a swish and a thud, the sound of the axe. Hermione sways, Ron stops, and Harry feels like his insides fell out. Hermione whispers, "They did it. I don't believe they did it." And that's where chapter 16 ends, on the echo of that sound and the feeling that something just broke. I'm first read of this book, that was a big moment, and you almost thought he was going to get away somehow in that moment. The trio were going to save Buckbeak. The trio knew what to do. Like, they always get themselves out of situations, but there was nothing they could do to save Buckbeak in this moment. We'll see if we get any follow-up on that. Wink, nod, hint, hint. All right, now we're going to move on to chapter 17, Cat, Rat, and Dog. Chapter 17 picks up on that shock. Harry's mind is blank. The sun is gone. The grounds feel darker than they should. They're under the cloak again, moving slowly, letting the horror of what they just heard sink in. And Scabbers is losing his mind. He's clawing at Ron. He's biting him, trying to escape with the kind of terror we haven't seen from him before. Then Harry sees something moving in the dark. It's Crookshanks. Hermione begs him to go away, but cats do not respond to emotional reasoning. Crookshanks is locked on target with Scabbers, knowing there's something wrong about this rat. Not just any rat. I'm going to save my humans from this evil rat. Scabbers finally slips free, and Ron, being Ron, throws the cloak off and sprints after him. He's already missed him once. He doesn't want to lose him again. He wants to be with him to the end of his little life, which, of course you want to. Your pets, anyone who has a pet knows how Ron feels, even though it's a rat. People love rats. I knew a guy in college who had rats. He loved them. Personally, a little creepy for me. Harry and Hermione yank the cloak off themselves and follow it, fluttering behind them like a banner. And then we go from grief to absolute chaos in seconds. They catch up with Ron, who wrestles Scabbers back into his pocket. And that's when the dog appears. Out of nowhere, an enormous jet black dog with glowing eyes and too much purpose comes charging across the grounds. The Grim, the thing Harry's been seeing all year. Professor Trelawney would be delighted, honestly, to know this probably. Except this time, it's not at a distance, it slams directly into him. It knocks Harry flat, goes for him, misses the tumble, and grabs Ron's arm instead. Or was it Ron's leg? His arm or leg. And this thing just drags Ron away. Ron is fighting, yelling, and wandless, and this dog is hauling him like he weighs nothing. Harry lunges, grabs fur, and then gets thrown off. Hermione is knocked down by the Whomping Willow's branches, of all things, because of course, right? Because the dog is heading straight under the tree. And this is like a tree we've known for a little bit. We crashed a car into this tree with Harry and Ron. It's an angry tree. Ron disappears into a hole below it at the base of the trunk. Arm in the dog's jaws, leg twisted at a horrible angle, and then there's a crack as he breaks his leg. That's right. He breaks his freaking leg trying to save his pet. He's that crazy about keeping his rat. When Well, in all honesty, whatever Ron was trying to do at this point, it just kind of falls out of his control. He's being dragged by this very strong, suspiciously strong dog. Harry and Hermione can't get near the trunk without being clubbed by branches. They're wild, desperate, and yelling for help that isn't coming. And then Crookshanks, the hero of this chapter, slips under the branches like he's done this before, pads to the trunk, and presses his paws on a knot. And then the tree freezes. Dead still. Completely still. Like, this would have been nice to know last year. That one detail is such a good breadcrumb. Crookshanks has been here. Crookshanks knows the dog, and Crookshanks knows this tree. Harry and Hermione take their chance, and they dive into the hole. They slide down into a long, low underground tunnel. It's cramped, dark, and it feels too long. Crookshanks leads. Harry and Hermione follow. Ron, somewhere ahead, being hauled along. This is one of those sequences that reads like a horror game level. You can't stop. You can't turn back. You don't know what's waiting at the end, but you really have to just keep crawling. The tunnel rises, twists, and eventually ends at a trapdoor into a wrecked bedroom. Torn wallpaper, broken furniture, boarded up windows, dust everywhere, scratches on the wood. Hermione realizes this first where they're at. Harry, I think we're in the Shrieking Shack. Man, what would they do without Hermione sometimes? I know this isn't like the exact knowledge that like saves their lives, but like she's just so smart. The most haunted house in Britain, or at least Hogsmeade, if you want to say that, which we're about to find out has never actually had a ghost in it, by the way. They hear movement upstairs and they creep up to the staircase. There's a shiny drag mark on the floor where something or someone was hauled. Harry kicks open the door, and there's Ron on the bed, clutching Scabbers' leg in pieces. I mean, his bone, not his actual leg, the bone in his leg. At least there's not Gilderoy Lockhart here to remove the bone completely from his leg. Crookshanks is on the bed too, purring like he owns the place. It's his palace. Harry and Hermione rush to Ron, asking, "Where's the dog and what happened?" And Ron says the line that cracks the whole thing open. Not a dog. He's an animagus. Please let me be saying that right. The door shuts, and out of the shadow steps a gaunt, wild-haired man with sunken eyes and a face pulled tight over his bony flesh. Sirius Black. This is the moment. He disarms all three of them with a Expelliarmus. His voice sounds like it's forgotten how to be used. Probably even like a little more faint than the way I just said Expelliarmus. I just wanted to say the spell. Forgive me. He looks at Harry like he's looking at James Potter's ghost. And Harry is done being scared. He's been told all year that this man murdered his parents, sold them to Voldemort, killed Pettigrew, blew up a street of Muggles. I'm getting mad just reading it. For the first time in his life, Harry isn't thinking about defense. He's thinking about hurting someone. He attacks Sirius with his bare hands. No wand, no plan, just grief and rage, and 13 years of pain focused on one man's face. Ron and Hermione grab him back, trying to hold him. Ron even says he'll have to kill them first. Sirius, still weirdly calm through all of this, points out that Ron is going to make that broken leg worse if he keeps standing on it. He says there will be only one murder here tonight, assuming he probably means Harry. And that's the moment you know. As terrifying as he looks, Sirius Black is not the cartoon villain we were promised. There's something else going on, but it doesn't feel right. Harry's screaming that Sirius killed his parents. Hermione is just begging him to stop, and Sirius doesn't deny responsibility. He keeps saying Harry doesn't know the whole story. And then the door blows open again. Lupin bursts in, pale, wand raised. He takes in the scene in one sweep. Harry with his wand on black, Ron broken on the bed, Hermione bleeding, Crookshanks sitting on Sirius's chest like it's his armchair. Crookshanks' involvement is pretty great. He disarms them all, including Sirius, with one spell. And then, instead of binding Sirius or arresting him, Lupin asks, "Where is he, Sirius?" Black points to Ron. Harry doesn't understand. Ron definitely doesn't understand. And then Lupin walks over and hugs Sirius like a brother. That's the wait, what moment of this chapter? Like, Are you serious? Is Lupin's in league with Sirius freaking Black? It breaks Hermione. So she has to say, you and him, I've been covering for you. He's a werewolf. Lots of hints towards this. There's lots of hints. Lupin just admits it calmly. And the chapter ends not with answers, but with a room full of people who have completely different versions of the truth. Ron clutching his rat, Sirius staring at it like it's his mortal enemy, Lupin realizing something huge, Harry feeling utterly betrayed, and the words, "That's not a rat, he's a wizard," an animagus by the name of Peter Pettigrew. And then roll the credits on chapter 17 and take a breath on that, right? That's a big one. Well, let's move on, shall we, to, I think, maybe the shortest chapter of the book. Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. Chapter 18 is the big reveal episode. The Shrieking Shack. It's such a tongue twister. The Shrieking Shack stops being a haunted house and becomes a courtroom. Ron calls them both mental. Hermione is clinging to ministry logic. And Harry knows, or starts to at least know, that something odd is happening here, and maybe he doesn't know the whole story. Lupin insists that they need to hear the full story and that Harry is owed the truth. And we get one of the richest dumps of backstory in the entire series. Lupin's secret life. It starts with him. He explains that he was bitten as a very small child. There was no cure, and his transformations were violent and dangerous. Dumbledore, becoming headmaster, chose to let him attend Hogwarts anyway, if precautions were taken. Those precautions, the Shrieking Shack was built. The tunnel from the Whomping Willow was created. The willow was planted to keep everyone else out on the full moons. Just one of those first full circle things that gives more meaning to something we already know in this world. The Whomping Willow. We meet it in the first book with the car crashing into it and whatnot, and now we got the meaning of its entire existence. Lupin would be smuggled out, transformed alone in the Shrieking Shack, and his howls became the haunted house rumors. The wild thing is that those transformations were the worst nights of his life, but going to Hogwarts gave him something else he never had. Friends. 3 best friends. Sirius Black, Peter Pettigrew, and James Potter. They eventually notice that Lupin disappears once a month, and he fears that they'll abandon him if they find out what he is. But instead, they study, experiment, and risk everything, and become unregistered animagi so they can keep him company as animals. I like that Professor McGonagall is one, and knowing that there's only 7 in the recent century and she's one of them, wow, McGonagall is just that much cooler for that reason. She could become a cat. But James is Prongs, Sirius Padfoot, Peter Wormtail, and Remus Moody, the Marauders. They sneak out every full moon under the invisibility cloak. Peter freezes the Whomping Willow, and they run the grounds together in their animal forms. Lupin admits that it was dangerous and reckless, and a betrayal of Dumbledore's trust, but it was also the happiest he'd ever been. Lupin reveals that he helped write the Marauders map, and that's why he knows how to use it. That's why he instantly recognized the names Harry never understood, and then the guilt hits. He never told Dumbledore Sirius was an animagus. He convinced himself Sirius was using dark arts to get into the castle. He didn't want to dredge up his own illegal past, and Dumbledore's trust meant everything, and he was afraid to lose it. Snape, meanwhile, has always known Lupin's secret. Because teenage Snape got too curious, Sirius played a near-fatal prank on him by telling him how to freeze the willow, and James had to save his life. Lupin has been living with that tangled mess of guilt. Grateful to James, guilty about Sirius's role, and dogged by Snape's hatred ever since. All of that leads to tonight. He saw Peter Pettigrew on the Marauders map. He saw Sirius collide with Harry and Ron and drag them into the Willow. And he realized Peter is alive, and he's been hiding as a rat. Ron is still clinging to Scabbers, like, this is my pet. This is not a grown man who faked his death, okay? Thank you very much. But Lupin and Sirius insist. They point out Pettigrew's death looked suspicious. All that was left was a finger. The rat has been in the Weasley family since right after that. He's missing a toe. I mean, the facts keep piling on. He's been trying to escape Ron all year, and he framed Sirius. Sirius is shaking with a need for revenge. He wants to kill Peter with his own hands. He wants to commit the murder he's been imprisoned for, in his own words. Lupin is forcing him to wait long enough to explain everything to Harry. And Hermione, to her credit, pushes on the Ministry Animagus registry, pointing out that Pettigrew was never listed. That's when Lupin tells her they never registered. He's standing in front of the 3 unregistered rule breakers from the past Hogwarts era. Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs were off book. That's the print of their whole identity. Hermione is horrified. Ron is horrified for different reasons. Harry is just trying to make all these competing truths reconcile with the story he's been told his whole life. Well, the story of Black for this whole year. He didn't know much about Black until the beginning of this book. But here's the emotional center. We learn that Sirius was not the Potter's secret keeper in the end. They switched to Pettigrew at the last minute. Pettigrew betrayed them to Lord Voldemort. Sirius went after him only for Pettigrew to stage his own death, blow up a street, and frame Sirius. So for 12 years, the wrong man rotted in Azkaban, and the real traitor slept in a Gryffindor dormitory, in Ron's bed, in Harry's pocket, on the train with them, at the Burrow, everywhere. And as Lupin and Sirius stand there side by side asking Harry to believe him, the chapter leaves us teetering on the edge. Scabbers thrashing, Crookshanks ready, 2 Marauders confronting the 3rd, and Harry caught between vengeance for his parents and the possibility that everything he's been told is a lie. The final cliffhanger moment of this chapter is Snape following them into the shack and revealing himself. He is ready to take on this murderer, and I don't think he truly knows the nature of what Sirius Black has really done in terms of the story they just told. Maybe he heard the whole story. Maybe he just got there at that exact moment. We will find that out next week. That is where we stop for this episode. These 3 chapters are a perfect example of how Prisoner of Azkaban operates on 2 tracks at once. On one side, exams, crush of the year ending, Hogwarts routines, kids stressing over grades. On the other, an execution in the pumpkin patch, a real prophecy about Voldemort rising, a dog dragging you under a murderous tree, and the entire truth about Harry's parents' deaths hiding in a rat, who still hasn't been revealed yet, if we are looking at it honestly. We go from will my teapot tortoise pass to my godfather isn't a murderer and my dad's friend is a traitor. My teacher is a werewolf. My pet rat is a grown man. It's insane in the best way for this story. We love the twists and turns. We love when everything culminates, and it makes for a great read. Next time, we deal with what happens when the rest of the adults catch up to this reveal. When Snape barges in, when loyalties collide, and when we see what mercy looks like in the wizarding world. This has been Magic Muggle, a Harry Potter after show. It's been my pleasure talking to you today. We have a tip jar in the About section. It's never expected, always appreciated. Goes on to help me make these episodes. Check out Marvel Maniac and MCU After Show, my other podcast, and we talk everything Marvel, MCU, and whatnot. Thank you again for listening. Rate the show 5 stars or on whatever platform you can, especially Apple. I almost said iTunes. How out of date is that? Give it a 5-star rating and a review. It'll be right on the show. And it just goes a long way to helping us get discovered. I hope you have a wonderful week. And until next time, wands down, hearts full.